Bonjour! Welcome to another episode of Cuisine Michel. I'm Michel. So today I'm going to make a recipe that I have made before and I absolutely love, so I totally wanted to share it with you. This is going to be for a roasted whole chicken with fingerling potatoes and leeks. Originally, this recipe was published in Fine Cooking, but that magazine no longer exists, neither does the website, so there is no place to find it anymore unless you go into like an archive or something. Anyway, this is my version of it, and to make this version, you're going to need the following things. So I'm not going to hold it up to show you, but you need a whole chicken, obviously. I've got that in the sink right now. You're going to need some kosher salt and pepper, Italian or what you might call flat parsley. You can use fresh or dried bay leaves. I use the fresh one when I can find it. Fresh thyme. And then you need 2 large, or in my case, my complete harvest of my leeks. I grew leeks in my garden, and so that's why they look like this. I am going to be, of course, cleaning them off and cutting off those ends. I just wanted to put them here. They're my harvest of leeks. So this is the equivalent of about 2 large, I think. And you'll need the top off of 1 of your leeks. In my case, since mine are kind of smaller, I kept the top off of 2 of them. Need some thick sliced bacon. Possibly need some olive oil. We'll get to this later, so we'll just have that just in case we need it. Some fresh garlic. Fingerling potatoes. There's 1.5 pounds of those here. Some butter. And you'll actually need some dried thyme as well. And then one last ingredient that I also don't have sitting here is chicken broth or chicken stock. You can use either one. You'll need 1.5 cups of that. So let's get started. All right, so here to prepare our chicken, we're going to start off by, you want to pat it dry as best you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, of course. And it says to use 1 tablespoon of kosher salt. Just using our outside, so I'm just going to kind of do it like that. Just let it kind of fall where it's going to fall. Some of that's going to get pressed in there when I just set that back down, and that's fine. So I usually just kind of let it do like that and then kind of work it in with my fingers just to kind of get it all over the skin there. And then we're going to do the same kind of thing with our 1/2 teaspoon of pepper. All right. Next, we're going to be putting some things inside the cavity here. It says to do 10 sprigs. I'm not going to count exactly. I'm just going to kind of guess with the parsley. So that's going to be my 10 sprigs of parsley. And then 3 of the bay leaves. It says 2 sprigs of thyme. This one just was kind of clustered together, so I'm just going to go ahead and put it in there, partly because I have plenty. And then we're going to be chopping up that green part, and you're going to put as much as you can get here at the end to stuff in. So that's probably about all I can fit. Give us some nice flavor there inside. And then we're just going to leave that sit while we prepare the other few ingredients. All right, so now in my cast iron, I'm going to be using cast iron because you're going to need a pan. Everything's going to be going into this pan eventually, and it's going to have to go into the oven at 450 degrees. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one to cook the bacon part. You're going to have 3 strips of bacon, and you want to cut them in kind of these bigger crosswise chunks like this to cook. You want to cook that bacon until it's just starting to get a little bit browned. You don't need it to be fully majorly crispy because it is still going to continue getting cooked a little bit more once we put everything together in the oven. Okay, so now in our pan, we have removed the bacon. It's already over here and draining. From the drained off fat, if you didn't end up with very much, I cooked a little extra bacon, so I had plenty. I am just using 1 tablespoon of the rendered fat. If you don't have a whole tablespoon, you'll need to use some olive oil to make up for it. So that's what I was explaining about the olive oil earlier. Now we're going to cook on medium heat here. I've chopped up my leeks. You should end up with about 4 cups. I was closer to about 3.5, which is fine. And then I also chopped up 2 cloves of garlic here. So I'm going to be adding those into my pan. And then we're also going to put 1 bay leaf in the pan. In the original recipe, it has, I believe, 2 tablespoons of chopped up thyme. I'm just going to put in the sprigs because you can take the sprigs out afterwards. You have to take the bay leaf out as well. So I'm just going to throw in some sprigs of thyme to cook along with this. That I think will be just fine. This is the first time I've done it this way, but it's a lot easier than standing there and trying to strip all the thyme off. And I think it'll still impart the same flavor, so we're going to be good to go with that. That should be fine. So we're going to cook this for about 5 to 7 minutes or until our leeks have started to soften. All right, so now what we're going to do, I took the mixture out and put it into a separate bowl. It doesn't matter if you get it perfectly clean, do not worry about that, because what you're going to do now is, carefully, don't burn yourself since your pan is going to still be hot. You're going to want to arrange half of your potatoes in the bottom of the pan. Now I'm not going to be super neat with these because, again, I want to get this already done. But if you want to be super neat and make a really, really pretty presentation, you can. Just make sure that your potatoes are kind of staying in a nice, even layer here. And in case it looks like it on camera, which it does in person, these are not sausages. This is fingerling potatoes. If you get the kind that are mixed together like this, so you can see I've got some that are purple here, and these are like the red or lighter purple colored ones. They are not sausages despite their appearance. I suppose if you wanted to prank someone, you could say, hey, look, this is a sausage. It totally could pass for it, I swear. Yep. All right, once I've got about half, again, I'm not measuring this to see exactly, just kind of guessing what about half is. Now I'm going to put my leek mixture back in. And just going to kind of spread that. And it says to go ahead and salt and pepper that. Actually, I was supposed to do that after I put the potatoes, but I don't think that the order is going to matter terribly there. And then we're going to, and we'll put our bacon in as well. And put the bacon in at that layer. And then put the remaining potatoes over the top of that. Again, try to layer as evenly as you can. All right, once we have that, again, we're going to salt and pepper. And then we are going to be pouring in 1.5 cups of either chicken broth or chicken stock. I have my homemade chicken stock here. After that, we're going to be placing our chicken up on there. But we're going to do something kind of interesting here. If you have still some bacon fat left, you can use it. If not, you can use olive oil, but you are to put this into the cavity part. So this is a tablespoon approximately. So that is to go in there. So I usually kind of give it a little push so it's in there with it. Now, it does say to tie this shut, but honestly, I don't usually bother with that, but I do tuck my wings back behind so that they don't get so dried out. Last, we're going to take, this is 2 tablespoons of melted butter. We're going to brush that on all over. And I think I forgot to mention it earlier. Your oven needs to be on 450. I think I talked about that at one point, but you're going to need the oven to be heated at 450. And we'll put that as a note on an earlier time so that you guys can get your ovens heated up earlier. I'll brush that all over. It's looking great. And then last thing you're going to do is sprinkle it with some of that dried thyme. Then we're going to pop this into the oven. We're going to be letting it roast until it reaches temperature. This one happens to have one of those pop-up timers, or not timer, but ready indicators. But if yours does not, make sure that you get it to the correct temperature and make sure that it is actually done. I know it will take at least an hour. I think the original recipe said an hour. This is kind of a bigger bird, so I'm probably going to have to go closer to an hour and a half for this one. All right, so you can see we have our totally prepared bird here. Now I do have to admit a little bit of something before we get started into taste testing here. Once this got about an hour in, I was starting to baste it with some of the juices that were in here, and I also added in some extra juice. In the past, I've actually I read in my blog that I only did this at about 425, but if you leave it up at 450, during that first hour, you're going to have a lot less juice here. So you might want some extra chicken stock. I just used chicken stock to go over that. Anyway, I also lowered the temperature after about an hour 20 minutes. I lowered it back to the 425 because it was starting to get really, really golden, and I was worried that it would start to maybe blacken or something, and I didn't want that to happen. So anyway, you can see we've got a really good thing going on here with the potatoes and the chicken. I'm going to start into this just a little bit here so I can get a little bit of that nice meat right there. Just so we can have a taste test on camera and then try some of these potatoes. But I'm telling you right now, this is really fabulous. I don't even need the taste test to tell me this. I've had this before and it is awesome. I'm actually going to have it with one of these potatoes. It looks awesome here. It's really super hot because you are supposed to let this rest for about 15 minutes. I think mine's been resting maybe 10 at most. So do be careful. It is extremely hot. I can still see the steam coming off of it. Oh, so good. So very good. As I said, I've had this before. It is completely awesome. I highly recommend that you have this. And I hope that you've enjoyed this episode and that you will also make this and watch some more episodes. We have plenty of them here at Cuisine Michel. So give this one a like. Please subscribe if you enjoyed it and tell others about it by sharing. And we'll see you next time. Au revoir.